into your conversation outside, would you kindly walk back in? All right. So we want to, before we embark on the next session, where also we will have a panel discussion, maximizing market access through contract farming, strategies and innovations. This will be a panel discussion. There was a very important also conversation we were meant to have yesterday regarding livestock.
Across Africa,
That is
agriculture is the
contract farming
predominant
model in
sector in
livestock
the economies of
value
most
chain that we
countries,
missed
accounting for between
because
30 to 40% of
some
gross
of the
domestic
panelists who are
product,
there or
and
the
the
speakers that
sector
were
is a
meant to
leading
be
source of
engaging
jobs
on
for
that
over
conversation were
two-thirds
not
of
there.
Africa's
But
population.
they graciously consented actually to
In
continue
Kenya,
today because they
despite
were
the
not able to
fact
come
that the
here.
agricultural sector
And we
contributes
want to
about
begin our
30% of the
conversation
gross
on that
domestic product and
before we
accounts
go
for
to the
80%
panel
of national
session.
employment, mainly in the
And
rural
globally,
areas, farmers face
livestock
crippling
contributes about
challenges in the
40%
agricultural value chain.
of
If we want to see this
agricultural
country
or
grow,
agricultural
the cost of
GDP
capital has to come down.
and
Why
provides
is it in the
livelihoods
West, right? Like in the
and
UK, for
incomes for at
example,
least
lending to an SME
1.3
interest rates are 2 to 5%.
billion people. Now,
Germany,
the demand
the
for
same.
livestock
US, the
products
same.
is projected to
Why
double
is the lending in
in the
African
next
countries
40 years,
15 to 25%?
offering
Doesn't make sense.
huge
Something systematically, the cost of capital is high, and I know everybody talks about risk, but we need to find a way, whether it's technology, whether it's talking to the financial sectors, whether it's, development institutions, something needs to be done. If the cost of credit is not lowered, the continent, the country, the sector
those
cannot
goods
thrive.
will grow to some $151 billion by 2050. So this is a very interesting area, and we want just to, if she's here, welcome Rajab Obama to come and talk to us regarding that particular session that we missed yesterday on contract farming models in the livestock value chain. Rajab Obama is a project monitoring and evaluation officer at the State Department of Livestock in Kenya. If Rajab, she's here or she's prepping to be here, I will give the session to her. But in light of that, as we continue, we'll see where to fix her in the program when she's here. I want to call upon right now the panelists for this session so that we can continue swiftly. And when Rajab is here, we'll know where to fix her. One more, I want just to call upon if Rajab is around, kindly walk up to the podium. In the meantime, the panelists for this session will be nice if we'll have you on the podium. And I want to call upon Hosea Machuki, who's the Chief Executive Officer, Fresh Produce Exporters Association of Kenya. If you're here, could you kindly just come up to the podium? There he is. Also, I want to call upon Anthony Morrison Fituo, who's the Chief Executive Officer, Chamber of Agribusiness Ghana. If you're here as well, kindly walk up to the podium. I want to call upon also Gerald Macau Musila. Gerald Macau Musila, Executive Director, Eastern African Grain Council. Gerald Macau Musila, Executive Director, Eastern Africa Grain Council. Masila, thank you for that, Chris. Correction. Also, we have Anthony Kioko. Anthony Kioko, Chief Executive Officer, Cereal Growers Association. Anthony Kioko, thank you. Penny Musengi, CEO and founder, Pesira Limited. Penny Musengi. Penny Musengi, where are you? There she is, she's coming. And this particular session will be moderated by Linda Capwell, Head Marketing and Communications, Kentegra Biotechnology. There she is as well. Thank you. So, Linda, take it away. Yeah, just check it out. It's okay. Or maybe not mark for it. No, it's okay. Just explain.
Mic check. Is it? Hello? Oh, okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Alinda Capwell, and I lead the market linkages, market access, and investor relations at Kentegra Biotech, which is a company in the agriculture sector, works upstream and downstream. So upstream, we aggregate farmers to plant pyrethrum, and then we provide a ready market for them. And then downstream, we process that same pyrethrum flour to produce an extract that we then export to processors worldwide to basically make organic pesticide and insecticides. Here right now, I have a panel that's pretty exciting because they speak for many voices. They speak for a diverse range of markets. And I'll let them introduce themselves in just 2 minutes, starting with Mr. Kioko on my right.
Thank you, Linda. And again, my name is Anton Kioko. I work for Cereal Growers Association. And for the non-Kenyan, Cereal Growers Association is a national farmer membership organization that brings farmers together so that they can address their challenges together. Started 28 years ago. We're based here in Nairobi, but a couple of regional offices. And we work across 4 pillars. We call them service pillars. And the first one is to represent farmers, as you would expect of any farmer organization. So in policy dialogue, policy engagement, basically policy advocacy. And then the second pillar is on technical support services, which is about helping farmers to access, but not just access, but optimize available technologies for enhanced productivity. And the third thing that we do is business linkages, where I guess most of the conversations around this conference lies, helping farmers identify opportunities and maximize on such opportunities. And the last thing that we do is provision of information or data, market trends, and information that generally farmers need to ensure that they function as sustainable businesses. Currently, we serve 650,000 farmers across the country, most of them smallholder farmers. And in our network of actors, we have dozens of private sector players, but also public-led institutions, which are service providers, input suppliers, or some other way engaging with farmers. Thank you so much.
Yes, Ms. Penny.
Thank you. My name is Penny Musengi, CEO and founder of Pesira, which is an agri-fintech operating at the intersection of finance, commerce, and technology. So what we do is we support the farmers to be credit worthy by giving them free transactional ledgers, credit rating, market linkages, farm management. And for the purposes of this summit, we also interlink them and support aggregators with the same. And through our partnership with World Passport Logistics, that is the Dubai government, we support aggregators with finance and information in terms of verifying their market in 23 ports. However, We also have a marketplace where the farmers can access inputs and supplies on credit, affordable insurance and micro investments. And we do technology across board. That means that we offer software as a service to all stakeholders. That is cooperatives, SACCOs, development partners, and government, ensuring that farmers are supported and are sustainable through the PESIRA platform. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gerald Masila, and I'm the Executive Director of the Eastern Africa Grain Council, which is a council of farms and organizations in the grain value chain covering the Eastern Africa region, about 10 countries. We were established in 2006, and our members are grain farmers, grain traders, grain processors, and other associated entities that have an interest or a stake in the grain sector. As a membership organization, we offer services and solutions to our members, including policy and policy advocacy, provision of market information, capacity building and training through an institute we call the Grain Business Institute, and we also facilitate trade transactions among our members through our trading platform called GSOCO, which is Grain Soko, the grain market, and happy to be thus here today to discuss contracts which are very, very core to getting agriculture to the next level. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. My name is Osea Machuki. I work for Fresh Produce Export Association of Kenya. This is a business membership organization for growers and exporters of flowers, fruits, and vegetables. We will be turning 50 years next year. So we've been around for a while. And we support our farmers with advocacy, capacity building, marketing, and compliance to national and international standards. I'm happy to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, my panelists. So right now, I will want us to start unpacking the practical strategies that ideally enable us to access markets globally or locally. And with a segue into, if you could all mention, what are some of the barriers that are experienced as farmers or basically businesses are trying to get into new markets? And are those challenges really experienced by both farmers who are contracted, or do we see differences in market access for farmers who are grouped and contracted vis-a-vis farmers who are not grouped and contracted? Hosea, you can start us off.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Linda. In farming, there is the good. Now, the bad is got to do with the challenges. Just for your information, we have 3 different models of business in fresh produce in Kenya that you probably need to be aware of. The first one is you find a group of farmers who operate from their own land. They have land that is sufficient for them to grow either the flowers or the fruits or the vegetables that they need. They probably have their own pack house, so they'll grow their own fresh produce, pack it, and sell it either locally through the retail system or export it to the international market. We have a second model where we have companies or farms that have percentage of their produce from their own farms, and they contract out growers to grow for them a certain percentage of that, and they provide them with the inputs, technical expertise, and they have contracts with them to be able to supply. And these are annual contracts. And the third model is where you have people you consider as traders who basically have contracts with the outgrower, individual farmers or farmer groups who grow for them, and then they're able to sell either locally or export. Now, some of the challenges you see, and I've had this discussed about earlier today, is you have a contract with a group of farmers, and those farmers then at some point decide to do their own thing, sell elsewhere. So that strains the relationship between the buyer and the grower. But we also have growers who, because of depressed demand, become cheeky, and then they decide not to offtake the produce that they had contracted the farms to do. And that's why we are very clear and keen to have the farm hand of government as a regulator to ensure that the contracts are respected between the growers and the off-takers, and to ensure that that business continues smoothly. So that's one of the challenges. The other challenge, of course, is the vagaries of weather that sometimes we don't talk about. We have had incidences where, yes, you have a contract with a growing group, but flooding happens, and the crop gets destroyed. So you really don't have a crop to sell to the off-taker as per the contract. And we call it the act of God. And this is where we require insurance from those companies that are ready and willing to provide insurances for the farmers, so that when such a thing happens, then there is indeed compensation. Another challenge that sometimes we forget is logistics. We have serious challenges with logistics in terms of delivering the produce to where it is supposed to be, either because some roads have been cut off or because we do not have affordable means of transport. These are some of the challenges that we experience, and it becomes difficult. A case in mind, for example, now, the Kenyan farmers, especially those who are growing flowers and vegetables, have a problem at the moment. About 20% of the produce is not being sold. The reason is that we do not have sufficient air freight capacity out of JKI. So you can imagine farms are harvesting flowers, they're harvesting vegetables, and simply throwing them into compost bins, while the contract they have with the off-takers is such that they need to produce and deliver to them certain quantities of flowers or vegetables per week. But at the moment, because of lack of air freight, something that we believe the government of Kenya has a big part to play in providing the solution, we are not able to ensure that we keep our word in terms of contract. I'll stop there for now.
Thanks. It's always good to see the challenges or hear the challenges, but also good to also hear the success stories. Mr. Gerald, do you have anyone particular that stands just because you were contracted with farmers, you were able to access other markets that were not previously in your purview?
Yes, indeed. We have had instances where, because the relationship between the actors in the value chain, the producer, the handler, and all the service providers and the off-taker have all been organized contractually with clear agreements and actions and expectations well defined and followed through and actioned, then we've seen possibilities, or we've seen actually success. And in my sector, in the grain sector, we are handling both cereals, and cereals is your grass family, your maize, wheat, rice, sorghum, millet, all those cereals. And then you have pulses, and these are your bean family from the pods, green grams, pigeon peas, chickpeas, and so on and so forth. A few examples, for example, in the cereals, a crop like barley, as an example, no one grows barley without a contract. You first get a contract, and because you have that contract, everything then moves and moves, and interestingly, where you grow your barley, the conditions and everything are very similar to wheat, but you will always hear wheat problems, and I know my brother Kioko here will maybe share a bit of that. But the barley farmers don't face a similar situation because they have an offtake contract, and with that offtake contract, you have all the support that comes with it from inputs, mechanization, and you're even able to transfer risks through into an insurance and so on and so forth. And then at harvest, your off-taker will be there with you. They will off-take the barley, you get your payments, and the process continues. We've also seen the same happening with sorghum. Actually, white sorghum, 10, 15 years ago, white sorghum, Gadam, was really not existing in this space until when research was done by Carlo and the breweries, and they worked on the Gadam sorghum. And how did Gadam sorghum get into the market? Contract farming. The off-taker organized the aggregators, and then the aggregators organized the farmers. And with that organization, production was done with proper seeds coming in, finance coming in, quality matters and all that taken care of. Offtakes done with clear pricing, where we know what is the farm gate price that the farmer of sorghum will get, and what the aggregator delivers to the processor will get. And that's another example of success in contract farming. I could also cite examples in other industries. Have worked for British American Tobacco, and in tobacco, again, you don't grow tobacco unless you are contracted and you have that all aligned properly. And there are many other value chains that we can cite. But coming closer home to even crops like green grams that we've seen contracts being executed with an exporter or an off-taker in place, and we've seen production being done, everything done, including aggregation and payment settled. So in short, we've had successful model of contracts, and I think the big anchor there is the market, because you have a market. And the key other very important ingredient is that you don't have, political interferences in that whole process, because the minute you bring in political interferences, you cause issues. And then the actors also, if they don't bring in opportunities which were discussed earlier on, of side selling, where because I invested and because I invested with the contract with the producers, you who did not invest comes and add 1 or 2 shillings, and you take away the produce that I invested in. It's actually unethical. It's so wrong. And if we are to complain, we are the people who make these things not well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Gerald, for that. Moving to areas financing, we understand that farmers are the most unfinanced, unbankable, and if they're actually banked, then really are not able to access some of the, I would say, financial resources that I would say, people like the salaried, contracted actually do. Penny, if you could please highlight, are there any innovative financing solutions that really could enable some of the contracted farmers access, so that they can then it can then open them up to other markets so that they can sell their products too?
Okay, thank you,
Sure.
Linda. First, maybe I would talk to the challenges of why the farmers are not able to access the financial products. And this is because the farmers lack digital records, security. Before the panel here, they spoke about a small scale farmer handling 2 or 5 acres, and maybe sometimes the acreage is family owned or ancestral land. So the innovative solutions are, for example, like Pesira, you have Pula or Apollo, are solving that aspect of giving the farmers transactional ledgers, the availability for them to have tracking systems where you can see this farmer has gone to season, maybe 2 or 3 times, or even maybe 5 or 2 years past. However, the traditional banks still deem farmers very risky. And that's why we have to come up with blended finance, where fintechs or even crowdfunding or investors can come together and put a pool of money. And I'll give an example of one that is doing that very well, called Flow with FinInclusion. And you find that the interest rates are up to 3 to 6%. However, also inputs and supplies are very expensive, and the farmers require financing for that, because if inputs are affordable, it means that they can go to market, then they can fetch the proper price. But then if you can do traceability of how they are doing the correct inputs, that is certified seedlings, then definitely that farmer can get a contract with an aggregator. However, is also the aggregator being financed? Can the aggregator be able to show that I have 1,000 farmers who definitely are using the correct inputs and supplies. You can track that. They have financial transactional ledgers. They have the best practice of farm management. So there are very many innovative tools. And maybe what I can add is the essential support of capital ensures that both farmers have inputs and supplies. They have risk mitigation, ensuring that they fulfill their contractual obligations. They're able to sort issues of logistics in terms of market linkages, and even the ability just to have financial literacy and training. So yes, there are very many emerging innovations, and I think technology and digitization is going to be at the forefront, and collaboration as well. Thank you.
Mr. Anthony, do you want to add anything on that?
Thank you. Just to add some quick remarks on that same question. I think Gerard alluded to it, but in summary, in our engagement with farmers and the off-takers that we work with, three things keep recurring. The first thing that you're going to be looking at is quality, and I think that's been mentioned severally. But then there has to be a mutual understanding of what the quality expectations are. The second one would be on volumes, and someone in the earlier session talked about, storage and logistics, and in many cases, you find that farmers may fail to access a sort of market that they're aspiring for simple things that they do not have a place to keep sufficient volumes of what they need to present to the off-taker. And related to those two, again, would be what is the marketing environment about? And you talked about the issues that farmers face as they try to access market. Now, contract farming, obviously, we know it's just one of the ways in which farmers would try to get to the market. And there was a mention by Jose about the challenges, and a few of the successes were also mentioned by Gerard. But the flip side of the success that you see in contract farming for most of the value chain is largely dependent on what is the very nature of that value chain and how else can you get to the market for that value chain. For instance, if you look at the value chains where contract farming is succeeding, there are going to be those value chains where the route to market is limited. For example, Gerard talked about barley, but in this country, barley is growing. Barley is grown for brewing, and there's only one major brewer in this country. So if you're going to grow barley, you're going to find there are very few other places you're going to get to the market to, unless you serve the breweries. Now, if you quickly contrast that to a value chain such as maize, where there are thousands of willing buyers and off-takers, contract farming will be very tricky, and there has to be very specific arrangements that can guarantee that there's not going to be side selling or that the arrangement is not going to collapse at some point. So just those quick remarks, I'm sure we're going to delve deeper into that.
Thank you, Anthony, for that. I think I will want to ask Gerald. We have heard a lot from both yesterday and today that there's a lot of engagement and discussion with farmers for them to understand these contracts and what is entailed. I want to understand, how really do we do those? How do we really engage them? And are they as effective? Because sometimes we're here sitting in Nairobi in headquarters, assuming all contracts, everything else is okay. But then probably farmers don't understand the regulations, the market dynamics, the pricing. How elaborate are we as association, as aggregators, in explaining these facts to the farmers?
Yeah, thank you, Linda, for that. And I think that's the biggest issue that has been making it difficult for us to really expand and extend the contract farming as a concept. And it all comes from the understanding that all the actors being put together in that contractual arrangements have. If I am the farmer and I'm getting into a contract, I need to understand what does it mean and what are my obligations in that contract. If I am the off-taker, the same, whether as an aggregator or as a final processor and so on and so forth. But the issues we've had that make it quite difficult is that when you look at and I know later on there will be the session that will look at the legal aspect of contracts, but by basic definition, a contract is an agreement that is enforceable. So there are two key components there. You are agreeing about a number of things which you are going to put in the contract. And that's okay, mutual agreement, which you document. And then there is the issue of enforceability. To the extent that you cannot enforce, then it is not a contract. And that is where everything falls apart. I think our biggest issue, particularly in those value chains like Anthony has talked about, where you have very many willing buyers and sellers and that whole process of respect and what alternatives you have in the event of a breach of the contract, what alternative you have, because going to the normal law, courts of law, to resolve an agriculture-based contract, a farming contract, you have lost even before you have started, because where is your evidence? This is a perishable commodity, and you have many, many aspects there that become technically very, very, very difficult. Plus, how long will it take for you to resolve this in the laws of court, in the courts of law? And so, in fact, one of the biggest components or issues in contract farming is not just contracting with the farmers to produce. But like my brother Hosea here said, that bit where you need to access land to produce through a lease, and you sign a lease for land, and then a year later, you are kicked out of that land, and you already paid for 5 or 10 years, and you have invested, and you have no recourse. There is nothing you can do. How does that work? And that bit there, that it contracting to access land as a resource for you to do production, that is where, in fact, things don't sit well before even we go to producing, to contracting to just produce. Linda, let me stop there. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I think, Anthony, I would want you to add briefly. So, as you discuss with your cereal growers, how do you usually engage them? Do you use modern means, technology, or do you still go to the grassroots and actually have physical participation with your farmers?
Thank you. I don't know whether it would be in my place to determine whether they are modern or they are not modern, but we have ways of engagement anyway. I'll let the audience determine whether they are modern. But there's something that Leonard Kubok, representing the PS, spoke about in the morning, and I think it laid a very good foundation for why all this conversation is there. And he talked about, if I recall, he talked about efficiency, fairness. He also talked about reliability and trust. And without those 4 elements, all these cannot work. And the engagement processes that we deploy try to attain that vision or to realize that vision. How do you ensure that both parties, number one, understand what's at stake, what is supposed to be delivered, but then also how do you navigate the other challenges along the way to ensure that the contracting process comes to a conclusion. And we basically do 4 or 5 things across value chains that we support. And the first one is to map out the off-takers, especially because the producers are there. But then also that mapping, sometimes you have an occasion where off-takers approach us and they want to have certain volumes, produced and aggregated, delivered of a certain quality. And so that mapping to understand on one hand who it is that is looking to off-take and a contract arrangement, and then also who are the people available and willing to participate in that. And then that leads us to the second thing, which is the actual and or formal engagement. We call B2B, engagement, where the 2 parties now are able to meet. Most times it's going to be face-to-face. And then that's where you try to negotiate the issues and understanding, but then also trying to establish trust, trying to ensure that there is understanding of what is going to be expected. And the third thing that you do along the way, because signing a contract and then disappearing may not in itself guarantee success. And this is where the previous panel that was here, they talked about themselves as intermediaries. Now, this is where an organization such as even Cereal Growers Association with our network of field staff is able to keep checking across the season to ensure that what was contracted is actually being planted and is actually coming up well. And then the next thing that you do is just before you're ready now to offtake, have an assessment to ensure that there is the actual produce that you're actually targeting to grow. We call it pre-season engagement. And finally, you're going after the contracting process is over, you then must engage in a post-season review where you try to evaluate what worked, what went wrong, and then you can make improvements based on that. So essentially, those are steps, or there are methods that we find ourselves engaging or deploying across many of the value chains and in many of the farming areas that we work in. And this has, to a large extent, supported the success that we note in our business.
Thanks, Anthony, for that. Sticking to matters tech, Penny, if you may. We want to understand what role does technology play in enabling us as marketers really access markets out there? We understand a lot of things are becoming digitalized. Has that really enabled us open up markets that were previously not in our purview or inaccessible to us?
Thank you, Linda. Technology plays a big role because as everyone here has spoken about the aspect of traceability.
Just a minute, Penny. I think your mic. Yeah, can we hear it?
Can we hear it?
Sorry,
Yeah, just a bit. Thank you.
And now? Okay. So we've talked about the manual or the physical process of going to confirm the farmer is doing best practices so that the produce can go to market. Now with technology, you can be able to trace from when the inputs were bought, whether they are certified, be able to keep that data in a digital platform, which not only do you wait for an aggregator to come and take the produce to the market, the aggregators now can tell their off-takers, it can be in Dubai, Netherlands, log into my profile, for example, a Pessira profile, look at my 10,000 farmers and track with them as the produce is growing. So that by the time the produce is getting to the market, the aggregator doesn't need to wait for 120 days. They can be able to be paid. And on the other side, technology in terms of fintech and availability of financial products to the farmers' phones and to the aggregators ensures that the farmer is paid upon delivery. So in terms of market linkages, technologies are playing a big role. In terms of financing and cutting short the timelines between how the aggregator is paid and the farmer, that can be there because of the aspect of traceability and digital records. And the other is the consumers are changing. They want to be able to tell what is on my plate. Can I be able to track it? Can I be able to tell that Kamau in Nyandarua is growing the correct potato, or the seeds that for maize, for example, that are coming to my plate, not only in the local or international market. So technology can play that role in terms of tracing that. Yeah. I want to leave it to that.
Thanks for that. Mr. Jose, I would like to add, because I'm cognizant of the role you play in terms of exports.
Thank you very much. Yeah, the space where we operate, which is in fresh produce, has a couple of technologies that are deployed. I'm sure many of you who have interacted with the soil know that many years ago we were not able to determine many physical and chemical factors of the soil, but now we do. We use different sensors, moisture sensors, and soil map equipment to be able to determine the properties of our soil, because soil is the most important, is one of the most important aspects of farming. I'm sure many of you have seen drones being used now to, scout and spray avocados and mangoes and many other crops, including, I think, barley and wheat, including using them to detect specific spots on the farms where we have high densities of infestation of pests or indeed some diseases. We have robots. There are companies here in Kenya that have subsidiary companies elsewhere in Europe, and they do plants for planting. So they do the initial small plants here, which they export to Europe. And in Europe, because we don't have a lot of labor, then we use robots plant those specific plants. And also for packaging, some robots are used to package. We have many other technologies that are deployed. Currently, we are dealing with the serious pests, the false codling moth on roses and chilies. And some farms here in Kenya have deployed cameras, night vision cameras that detect the movement of those pests, and then they're able to, report to the central system, where then they can be collected in terms of data. So there are lots of technologies used. We use a lot of technology in irrigation systems. An irrigation system that is intelligent enough to know that it's time to now irrigate because the moisture content has gone down. And so they have sensors that are, attached to those irrigation systems, and these are utilized, especially for high-tech farms in Kenya. Thank you.
Thanks, Hosea. Sticking to you still, because I understand your passion towards PPP, public-private participation. I wanted to understand, what role do you think that plays in us as marketers really accessing markets that we are in, either a new entry or just expanding the current market that is already available?
Thank you. The subject of PPP is very interesting. I know when I talk about PPP, somebody here will look at me and think about Adani JKI. That is not what I'm talking about. That's one of it, but I don't want to delve into that. I would restrict myself to PPP in agriculture. Now, we had a meeting yesterday with the CS for agriculture. I don't know whether Leonard was in that meeting. And the CS told us that the cabinet has not approved a document that allows, government to lease farms. Government is one of the largest landowners in Kenya, and we have large tracts of land owned by government where cereal growers, Anthony, you need to get into this space and utilize some of these lands to grow cereals for food security and also for commercialization. So that partnership between government and private sector, especially in the leasing of land, is already on the table. And in terms of trade, there is a nexus between what government and private sector does. For our case in fresh produce, our public-private partnership comes by way of engaging the State Department for Trade and also the Ministry of Agriculture, which hosts an important institution for us, the Kenya Plant Health Inspectorate Service, that is considered as the National Plant Protection Organization, whose mandate is to negotiate sanitary and phytosanitary protocols between Kenya and third-party countries where we want to trade. So we partner with them to be able to do that in order to open new markets. And then from opening new markets, then we have a way of trading. As you may be aware, very recently, Kenya and the EU have signed an economic partnership agreement. I think there are currently awareness sessions running across the country. This is one of the perfect examples of government working with private sector in these partnerships to leverage on diplomacy so that we can continue to trade, for example, between us and the EU, duty-free, quota-free, as a way of enhancing trade. And there are many more other partnerships between public and private that happen when we talk about a business. A case, for example, if you go to my village, the county government built an avocado processing plant, which they imagined they could run. They tried that, they failed. They now partnered with a private sector player who now runs that facility, and it is creating jobs, and it is producing avocado oil. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Mr. Gerald, any particular one where PPP has not really facilitated your operations?
Thank you, Linda. I'm so sure I would say exactly PPP did not facilitate, but just to say that the opportunity we have is in the partnerships. That is where the opportunity is. And even here, discussing contracts, by design, a contract is a partnership document. It's something that puts you into a partnership, into an arrangement, into a format where you are defining the actors and the roles each of the actor will play. I think in the wider PPP, the challenges have been the roles that we assign or we take, the roles that government takes as a public sector partner, the roles we are giving to the private sector entities. And so we've seen many instances where the public sector or government takes in a role that is not best placed for government, because government is a bureaucracy by design, and it's of necessity actually that it becomes and remains a bureaucracy. But in business, and when you're carrying out business, decision making and reaction time and all those other things are such that time is so much of essence. Like in our space in a commodity trade and what have you, in 2-3 days prices move. An opportunity can come and disappear in 5 days. Now, when you look at those settings in a public sector where you have to have committees and and many other things to make a decision on factors that already moved, by the time you come back, it's already gone. So when you find instances where government wants to be the farmer, government want to be the warehouse keeper, they want to be the businessman, and also they want to be the regulator. So they want to be on the pitch, playing, taking all the numbers, and also carrying the referee. That is where things go wrong. So if we can be quite clear and purposefully with ourselves, give ourselves or take roles that are best placed. Government's roles are very, very important as a referee. You can't have a game without a referee, and as a facilitator. And so if we can have the facilitation roles remaining squarely with government, facilitation roles, enabling roles. And if they are not enabling, then that is undoing what you are trying to achieve. So let's have the facilitation roles remain with government, and that will open up now the other roles, whether it is expertise in farming, in financing, in everything else, being done by the private sector. We have now the land commercialization process, which was approved. But since it was approved by cabinet a couple of months back, we are still in the dark, most of us in the private sector. We are ready to take up, and we are part and parcel of conceptualizing even that whole process of identifying, and we were shocked to find so many millions of acres sitting idle that can produce very well. And we were saying, if we have a format, a formula, where as producers we can access this land, produce, and have a formula to reward the landowner, who is the government in this case, then it would work. At the moment now, there isn't a formula. One of the contracts I saw recently that was offered to a private sector person, the agency from government, the money that they were asking upfront to be given for you to get access and start investing to produce was money that you cannot even make as profit for 10 years. So that kills the deal immediately. And then you also quite have a bit of other gatekeepers who have come up, and now decision-making approvals are a problem. So we actually get stuck because of not having a common objective, saying as a country, we have to produce, we have to bring down the cost of production, and we have to utilize our resources properly as a common goal. And then we ask ourselves, what do we do to achieve that? And that's where we have a problem. So we are calling on government, let's focus on the facilitative role of government, and everything else will flow. The money is there, the actors are there, the knowledge is there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gerald, for those remarks. I think I really appreciate the value of assigned roles. You cannot be the player in the entire game. Yeah. I think in closing, I will want for us to just have almost like an overview and trying to imagine in the next couple of years, next couple of decades, the trends that are emerging. How are those going to affect our appetite in terms of entry into new markets? I can start with you, Anthony, and then we'll all have a go at it.
Yeah. Thank you. I think looking into the future, we are very interested. But maybe before I talk about the future, let me just chime in a bit about the PPP role that both Osea and Gerard have very competently spoken to. And to just say that, not to my friend Osea, yeah, we're quite interested. And this is a conversation we've had for almost 10 years now. You know, just discussing what it is that can be done. We have a lot of farmers, especially the commercial farmers, who are heavily capitalized. They have equipment, but they do not have adequate arable land on which they can farm. And therefore, this has been part of what we're quite interested in. But just to say 2-3 quick things. The transparency aspect of it, which Gerard has spoken to, very important. Where are these lands? Who can access what, and when, and under what terms, and how well are those negotiated? You know, that sort of arrangement. But then also, government role in providing the infrastructure that is going to allow investors come in without too much, capital risk, or without having to start from zero. Because if the objective is shared that we want to produce food for this country, we want to ensure that there is job creation, and those nice sounding things that we all talk about, then there must be no barriers to people who have the equipment, the technical know-how, and the will to work on those lands. And sometimes we tend to get a sense that that's not completely there. But then also the enforcement of the rules, and I think that is also very important. So in essence, you may want to see the opportunity that there is in public-private partnership as not fully optimized. And what is important, because the regulations are there, you keep hearing about this meeting that happened and this document that has now been passed. If we can just start living the letter and spirit of the process, I think we'll be home and dry. But not talking about the future, I think two important things. The first one is technology. When you look at the future, contract farming is going to be heavily influenced by changing technology, and I think Osea, I think, ought to speak about that quite well. I don't have to repeat what he said, but that's going to be important because it creates visibility, but then also makes it easy to provide technical support, and also helps to take out some of the risks that currently make contract farming a bit of a risky affair on both sides of the equation. But then also, you're going to be looking at the emerging trend where, because of environmental and social governance issues by companies, a lot of companies that have not in the past bothered to source locally, they are probably willing to more often than not import. There is that added conversation now that you see in our discourse that they want to localize sourcing, and that is going to be an important conversation to have, and it's going to be part of the influence that's going to inform contract farming going into the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Anthony. I think Penny, in below 1 minute, if you may.
Okay, I'll make it below 1 minute. For me, I'll talk into the opportunity. 70% of population in Kenya and Africa are small-scale farmers, including agri-SMEs that are in the various value chains. So we'll be looking at a lot of innovation in terms of fintechs, because there'll be financial institutions that want to identify and look at that market to support it. We'll be looking at a lot of impact funds that are going to be coming to the country. So what will be the innovation in ensuring that funds are traced all the way to the farmer, that they are supported? The other is, maybe I'll just touch a bit on technology. However, Hosea has been very exhaustive on that. If you look at technology and climate and customer preferences, there'll be the aspect where farmers will be at the forefront of climate and environment, where they will include their practices, where a farmer is either growing trees on their 2-acreage farm, and there's maybe climate carbon credits, which are given back to the farmer through his phone. And currently we do have an organization like that working with us called Verity. So for me, it's the opportunities in agriculture, solving food security, job creation, rural women inclusivity, being at the forefront of climate and fighting, and we'll be seeing a lot of inward looking towards agriculture sector. Thank you.
Thanks, Penny. If you may, Gerald and Hosea, I'm pretty sure there are going to be questions from the crowd that you're going to answer. So I will want to open up the discussion to our attendees so that they can give us feedback, give us questions, because I think we all love crowdsourced intelligence. Yes, please. Mike for her, please.
Thank you. My name is Jean Jiro, and my question is to Hosea. And I wanted to ask about the freight. For very many years, we've heard that freight is a challenge in export of horticultural crops. Why is it not so? I mean, is it so difficult to address it? Or what are the plans that are there to solve it? And to Gerard, what are the efforts being made to reduce aflatoxin in grain? Because we understand we are consuming a lot of aflatoxin in our ugari, even in milk. And to Anthony, what are the production trends? When are we likely to stop importing our cereals like maize? We understand we are importing 15 to 30%. Are there threats that indicate that we may stop importing maize? Thank you.
I think we can answer those. Hosea, do you want to go first in terms of freight challenges that we're experiencing and why they have not been solved for decades?
Thank you. It's an important question. Every week we export somewhere between 3,500 to 5,500 metric tons of fresh produce out of JKIA. What has happened in the recent couple of weeks is that airlines have withdrawn some of their vessels because of the lucrative markets in Asia, where they get up to $8 to $10 per kilo. We are only willing and able to pay somewhere between $2.5 to $3 per kilo from here to Schiphol or to LNGG in Brussels or to Heathrow. Now, if you own that vessel, you will definitely go for the top dollar. So when that happens, then we have depressed capacity for air freight out of JKIA. What have we done? We have encouraged other airlines to come and lift our fresh produce. And I'll forthrightly say here that a number of airlines, Ethiopian Airlines, Emirates, even private companies, want to bring charter to Nairobi. The trouble is the Ministry of Transport. The Ministry of Transport has refused to grant these airlines permission to fly into Nairobi and carry our fresh produce. Why? I have no idea. We have engaged them. We have engaged the State Department for Trade. We have engaged the Minister of Agriculture. We had a meeting yesterday with the CS for Agriculture. We told him the same. He told us he's going to talk to his colleague. So that's where we are stuck. With respect to sea freight, of course, you know, we were doing well until we had the Red Sea crisis, which means that vessels cannot go via the Red Sea anymore. So they go down to Cape of Good Hope and turn around through West Africa, which is an additional 10 days. And flowers can't survive that. And it's an additional probably $200 per container, which is more than what we expected. Some 500, some much more. And that has disrupted trade as it were. Thank you.
Gerald, issues, aflatoxins, I think that's in everybody's head, considering the number of issues we've had in the past, both in our grains, peanuts, and everything else.
Yeah, thank you, Linda, and thank you, Jean, for that question. And I would say some of the drivers, what will drive us eventually into getting contractual and into embracing contract farming and embracing contractual relationships in our value chains, in our trade. One of the key push will be the issue you have brought out, which is the issue of food safety generally. Now, how do you ensure or assure food safety? For example, for grains, issues like aflatoxin and other mycotoxins that would be in grains and other kind of foods, the only way to establish whether you have, grain that is not contaminated is to sample and test in a proper lab and get test results. Looking at maize just with your eyes or smelling or organoleptics, you will never tell if it has aflatoxin or not. And the danger we have is that a lot of grain is produced, processed, consumed by all of us without anybody anywhere touching or taking any sample to test. And when we now even pick some samples, which we do from this, for surveillance, from the supermarkets for various brands of maize flour and others, you will be shocked to see the levels of aflatoxin in them. I'm sure you have seen in the past some of the actions taken by the Bureau of Standards. And so to your question, you are asking, what are we done? What are we doing? So one of the things is that with the producers and working closely with the cereal growers and others, we've been sensitizing and getting the farmers to get into farmer groups. So for us at EHGC, we don't advocate an intervention to a farmer as an individual farmer, and it's something we have even implored government and other development partners to consider that when you are doing an intervention at farm level, do it to a farmer group, to a cooperative, to a an organized setting. That gives you many chances to be able to train them and to be able to provide facilities that can be commonly utilized, whether it's dryers, whether it is testing kits and everything else that then become more economical because those facilities are available to a larger group of people, and especially being able to start doing aggregation. Because when you do aggregation and you can sample, you can test at that level, and you can now get to the market from the aggregated grain. And that's also the other thing, we have sensitized our millers that please mill or source grain from an organized group from where the grain is aggregated and sample there at the farm level and reject at that level. Then the question becomes, when you reject the contaminated grain, what do you do with it? Because when it still remains out there in the market, it becomes still a health issue. But thankfully, with our members and with support from some of our partners, we've been able to come up with technology that is able to remove toxins and aflatoxins from maize. One of the technologies is a technology called ozonation, where you generate ozone and you pass it through the grain, and that ozonation denatures the aflatoxin and you're able to remove it. Currently in Kenya, we have 2 installations, one in Bungoma and one here in Nairobi, where an Aflazero ozone treatment plant is in place, not yet launched or starting, but at least that is very, very good progress in terms of us being able to have a solution to deal with aflatoxin when it is there. But key to that is also consumers. We are sensitizing new consumers to really ensure what you are taking is of quality and is safe. And for you to do that is to pick brands and products that you can see have all the necessary certifications to secure your own health. Is that important? I submit.
Yeah, sure. Mike here, please. In case you have any questions, please just keep yourself visible so that, because I think we have about 2 minutes to
Thank
wrap up
you.
the session.
Yeah, I would like to speak to 2 issues. I think my brother Gerald has handled matters aflatoxin regarding the decontamination plants in Bungoma and Nairobi. Unfortunately, we ran into an unforeseen problem. Bungoma is way inside the territory of Kenya. Nairobi is deeper inside. How do you handle contaminated or cereals contaminated with aflatoxin? Not cleared at the ports of entry
determined to be having aflatoxin because you cannot transport the same confinement from the border points or the entry points to these plants. So this is a challenge that was not foreseen, and we are trying to unravel that complication. Two, on a land commercialization initiative, I was actually the team leader for that initiative when I was in ATO, Agricultural Transformation Office. And we set up an LCI, Land Commercialization Initiative Secretariat, to handle complaints. I would be more than happy if we have a side chat, Mr. Gerald, so that we address that concern regarding the offer. If it is an offer that is actually against the vision and the spirit of LCI, we can request for an executive decision from the highest office in this land to advise that particular organization or institution to be fair enough. Because how else can you address challenges to food and nutrition security and other matters when we are putting bottlenecks? We are not going to make money. This is a government institution, organization. The land has been idle, underutilized for 60 years or 63 years. Let's start somewhere. All right? So we have a crisis mechanism within that FCI desk or secretariat to address such concerns. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Any last questions? Any burning question? Oh, there you go. Oh, the experts.
Thank you. My name is Eric Mwangi, and I think, unfortunately, Mr. Masila, I'll also address this question to you because one, you are my former boss in another capacity, so my bias will be on you. I've just heard that 7% of farmers in this economy are small-scale farmers. Yet, at the same time, we are talking about a policy shift towards PPP and bringing in foreigners to come and, help us with large-scale growing. So my question is, how do we protect these 70% of farmers, given that mostly they are the unemployed youth and women in Kenya? Secondly, what policy do we have towards farming drought-resistant crops? Because for some reason we have so many agricultural bodies, yet we always seem to get it wrong, in that we know that every 5 years there's a drought in this country, yet we don't seem to have a policy that ensures food sustainability. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And in the interest of time, I'll be very quick. So on the first question, you are saying, and we all acknowledge, 70% of our producers are smallholder with land holdings that are not much, and they get their livelihoods from the agriculture practices. And then on the other hand, we are saying we also want to utilize our other idle land under government, under various agencies through large-scale commercial production and so on and so forth. How will that work? I think the answer is that we need both solutions. It is not either or, it is this and that. There is sufficient space and market for our smallholder farmers to produce. And in fact, if we can have those two models where we have the large scale production happening and also the small scale production happening, but the small scale being done under cooperatives and under organized groups where we're able to consolidate land, that of course converts it again back to large scale, because economies of scale in agriculture is a make or break in most of the value chains. But secondly, there are those value chains that are well suited for smaller, kind of operations. And there are those value chains that you would do very well when you do large scale. So we can then focus our smallholder farmers on those value chains that require that close attention in a smallholder setting. And again, we can have technology that is suited to those smaller holdings and so on and so forth. So it actually can be done, and we've seen it happen in other jurisdictions around the world. So it's possible. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for that. I think we'll end here for this session, but I'm very sure that the team is still available just in case you have any questions or deliberations that you'd like to have with them during lunch or during the day. Thank you for that. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you. A round of applause for them. What a cogent, a rich repository of knowledge that we've picked from them. We want to thank you, Hosea Machupi. We want to thank you as well, Gerald Makao Masila, Anthony Kioko, and Penny Musengi, with the able moderation of Linda Capel. A round of applause for them again. Right. I know we are inching closer to lunchtime, and we want to just maximize on this few minutes that is remaining. Earlier on, when we began, had called upon Rajab Obama to come and just give a brief presentation. This was a session that was meant to be there yesterday on contract farming models and the livestock as well. So they were not there yesterday, but he's actually here with us. And I know this is for the better interest also of some of our farmers here who are engaged with livestock. We have poultry farmers around, and this will be really right up their alley in terms of getting more information on what the government is trying to do, what modalities are they coming up with. We know there is the livestock master plan that was just launched this year. What also does it envision when it comes to contract farming? So I want to call upon Rajab Obama to just come and give us that brief introduction on what is happening. We say that globally livestock contribute about 40% of agricultural GDP and provide livelihoods and income for at least 1.3 billion people. And the demand for livestock is projected to double in the next 40 years, offering huge opportunities for more than 1 billion people who rely on the livestock industry for their livelihood. So this will all definitely pique your interest because that is a huge market that you can actually really tap into. He is a project monitoring and evaluation officer at the State Department of Livestock in Kenya. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together and make me welcome Rajab Obama. Briefly. So, you know, you'll just hear our stomachs rumbling from wherever you are while you're here. So that will be your indicator. All right. Thanks so much. Yeah. Okay. It's already up. You can point actually look as well.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, we were supposed to be here yesterday, but due to commitments, we were not able to make it. Actually, the director livestock production, the director of livestock development was supposed to be here, but because of other commitments, he has given me the leeway to come and represent him. So I'll try to fit into the big shoes of the director. Hope it will enrich the discussion. So my name Rajab. I work with the Department for Livestock Development. I've been a civil servant for most part of my life. Started working in the civil service since 1997 in various ministries. I've worked also with the Ministry of Environment and also now in the State Department for Livestock. My presentation outline, I'll just give an overview of the livestock sector, the main characteristics of our livestock marketing, and also some policies and frameworks which supports contract farming, and the contract models we have in place, challenges we are facing, and also the initiatives we are putting in place to support contract farming. So the overview of livestock sector. The sector supports livelihood of significant parts of the population and is a key to attaining food and nutrition security in the country. If you know that 80% or more than, slightly more than 80% of our land is arid and semi-arid. We find that most of our livestock are within the arid and semi-arid lands. And then we have the small percentage, around 24% of the high rainfall areas where we have the dairy farming, other type of livestock in dairy, and also in pig production. So the population, you see, we are still using the 2019 census. That gives you just an indication of the challenges we have already, because we have keeping the livestock statistics is a challenge. The livestock data is a challenge. I wish we could have like we have it in the wildlife, where we have planes counting livestock, but it's a bit challenged. So we still keep to the census of 2020, 2019. We are saying that we have about 21 million cattle, 27 million goats, sheep, 35 million goats, 4.7 million camel. We have around 50 million of poultry. This is a mix of indigenous, because the improved poultry, those ones are short term. So mostly we deal on the counting of the indigenous poultry. The subsector is vulnerable to hazards and shocks, especially droughts. Each and every year you hear of droughts. For example, since independence, we've had like 12 serious droughts in the country. Initially, it was a span of 5 years. Now it has gone to a short span of even 3 years. And the worst one we had in the 2021, the 2021 drought period was the worst in the last 40 years, because we lost a lot of livestock there. We lost about 70 billion shillings due to livestock mortality and losses related to livestock. The livestock subsector contributes over 30% of the farm gate value of agricultural commodities, about 12% of the national GDP, and at least 42% of the agricultural GDP. So the sector employs about 50% of the agricultural labor force. Before the structural adjustment program in 1992, the government did a lot in livestock marketing. But since liberalization came in, the government role was just left for regulation. So a lot of changes came in after that. There was a lot of increase in players in the livestock market, and especially in the livestock value chain, not only marketing, but generally livestock value chain, because now there are mushrooming middlemen. There are so many slaughterhouses coming in, and now the government role was just left to regulate and also facilitate the sector. There was increase in informal markets, and this is still happening even today. We have, like, if you go to the urban areas, we have a lot of bush markets, both bush markets for livestock, even for milk. They are not structured markets. Unless you find secondary markets which are now modernized. The government has been trying to come up with modern markets to improve the marketing in the sector. So we also have problem of poor infrastructure, including roads. These affect transportation because initially before liberalization, we had stock routes where these are parts where animals will pass. We had holding grounds where animals could be held, and the quarantine facilities were also within those areas whereby the animals will be inspected as they go to export markets or to the terminal markets. But since since structural adjustment, those systems collapsed. Right now, we have a lot of the number of holding grounds in troubles because of encroachments. They are not being used, coupled with devolution. Now there is changed. I mean, the county claim ownership of these holding grounds. The national government still claim the ownership of the holding grounds, and there is a lot of, disruption in the system. So the domination of middlemen has also taken place. Most of our animals, we say, are in the assals, but the nature of the pastoralists is that they depend on the middlemen to do the marketing for them, because most of these pastoralists are small-scale holders. They farm in small scale. So maybe they just keep, let's say they keep animals. They don't produce. That is why they can say, because if they want, they could sell maybe 2, 3 animals. They just call a middleman to the farm, may take the animal, or in the bush markets, take the animal up to the secondary market and even the terminal market. So there's also limited access to market information. The government, we've been trying in this area, providing market information. We used to have a platform, the National Livestock Market Information System. It's still there, but it has challenges coming on and off. When there is funding from the projects within the ministry, the system works. When the funding dwindles, the system stops, because we have to pay the data monitors to feed the information into the system. So integrating livestock into contract farming model in Kenya has a potential to enhance agricultural productivity and also improve livelihoods, and also foster more resilience farming systems. In Kenya, integrating livestock into contract farming can diversify income sources for small-scale farmers, create market linkages, and provide sustainable pathway for growth. However, these contracts require careful negotiation to ensure that fairness and mutual benefit between the farmer and the buyer is in place. This is still an area, a gray area, because most of our farmers, livestock farmers in contract, you find that they don't have that bargaining power. So there are various policies and frameworks which support contracting farming in livestock. The Better Agenda, drawn from the Vision 30, recognize contract farming as essential. There's contract farming. It recognizes that contract farming can enhance the integration of smallholders into the value chain and encourage private sector investment in agriculture. The agricultural sector transformation and growth strategy also realizes that transforming agriculture by modernizing farming systems, improving productivity, and promoting value chains. Contract farming is identified as a key strategy for achieving these goals, particularly in value chain of dairy, poultry, beef. The government, under this agricultural sector transformation, commits to provide a regulatory framework that supports farmer engagement in contract farming, while also ensuring that agribusiness comply with fair contract standards. Also, we have the livestock policy, which unlike the strategies for improving livestock production, with an emphasis of smallholder farmers. It encourages partnership and collaboration between the farmer and the private sector. So the key provisions in the livestock policy encourages establishment of clear agreements between farmers and processors, and also livestock, and also promote use of modern livestock management practices through contracts. Some of the contract models we have in the livestock value chain in Kenya. Contracting in livestock value chain is more in dairy and poultry. So in dairy, we have all over the value chain, from milk supply contracts to outgrowers contracts to input supplier contracts. The same to poultry. We see it mostly in eggs and also in broiler production. But also now it comes to meat value chain. We have production contracting models. For example, the Kenya Meat Commission is contracting some farmers to produce, and then they go and buy from them. And also the buyback contract model is taking place. We have private practitioners coming in beekeeping. We have there is a Savannah beekeepers, they're coming in. We have contract farming in hay production also picking up. So it's a private driven initiative, and also the government agencies are also coming in to help the process in contract farming. The challenges and opportunities which we see in livestock value chain contracts. One of the challenge is limit participation in contract model due to small scale nature of farming, but also is an opportunity in a way. Market and sustainability, price volatility. You can discuss today on a contract, but due to changing seasons and the prices, you find that your contract might not be viable as you anticipated at the beginning. Inadequate infrastructure, I've talked of that. Land ownership issues. Most of our lands, especially in the communal areas, is communal in nature. So contracting in livestock is very tricky at some point. And also, given the nature of the fluctuation, the fluctuations not only of prices, but even the weather pattern, the vulnerability to weather also affects livestock contracting. The risk, let's say just the risk involved in livestock. And then also the weak enforcement of contracts. And this one I used to see sometimes back. I've been in the civil service for some time. And when I was in the district those days, contracts come, the contractors in private, they come and make agreements with the farmers without the knowledge maybe of the district office. But when something goes wrong, they come back to the office. Now we have to start from what happened. So it is not structured in a way. So imbalance in contract terms, we find that most of our producers get unfavorable terms in contracting, and then the limited legal protection for farmers. There's still limited legal recourses for farmers in the event of contract breach or exploitation. The issue of access to inputs and credit is also a challenge in this area. So some of the initiatives that we are doing to support contract farming in livestock value chain is through farmer groups. We are really supporting the formation of farmer groups so that they can form cooperatives, because we know when they come together, they are strong. So most of the issues we are doing now is just concentrating on farmer groups, working closely with cooperatives so that our farmers can have negotiating powers in contracts. The cooperatives are very good because they also protect in a way the farmers when they come into contract. The issue of credit and finance is also a challenge. But is an area where the government is coming in through its agencies. We have the Agricultural Finance Corporation giving loans, to farmers if they're engaged in contract. If you can show a document that you're in contract, for example, KMC, Kenya Meat Commission, you have a contract with Kenya Meat Commission, you can go with that document, show that you have this to produce. It is a consideration. The Kenya Development Corporation, KDC, is also coming in strongly, supporting our farmers And then the government is also doing a lot of capacity building and extension, though this one is also beginning to be a challenge since devolution. Initially, when the government was not devolved, the extension was strong. Once the devolution came in, the extension has been weakening, but also the good thing is that the private sector is also now coming in, and especially these people who are providing the contracts. Those ones who are coming into contract want to make sure that things are working on. So they come also coming with technology, technical support to these farmers. So areas we can consider, or we do consider, areas we as governments, the last one, as governments, is that we are promoting genetic improvement. This is an area because for us, for you to produce, you need a good seed. You have the specifications. You need maybe if it's a bull, is a cow, is a sheep, you need that one which can gain weight. So we are really working on the genetic improvement through our farms. We have farms all over the country, about 14 farms concentrating on improvement of genetic of animals and sharing with the farmers. Nutrition management in the area of feeds is very key. 70% of costs mostly you find going to the feeds. So we are also, as government, concentrating in the area of feeds, the area of disease and health and disease management for livestock, vaccinations. This is an area of disease, is an area which has been a bottleneck for us even to export to other countries, because our disease control systems at some points almost collapsed. So we are building up, we are doing mass vaccinations, but also we are coming up with strategies to have quarantine. We already have a quarantine strategy in place. So this is an area we're also addressing. Areas to do with the improved management of animals in housing. We are coming up with standards. We have standards for even slaughterhouses, for for quarantine facilities, which can help our farmers to engage in contract farming. So we also have productive management trainings through, let's say, breeder groups with the farmers, so that they know when to produce maximum, to get maximum from their livestock, so that the time lapse on breeding, they improve on the time lapse on breeding. Technology innovation is also coming in place. We are integrating technology. Right now, we have areas where they are doing piloting precision livestock feeding. AI also is coming in strongly, so it's an area which cannot neglect, and also farmer training and education. This one is ongoing, but now as a national government, we are passing capacity to maybe the county staff. But now the county staff is also expected to capacity build the farmers. So there has been a break in what we can do with the farmers. Like we have to go now. If you want to go train the farmer, maybe the requirements. The Council of Governors, you have to go through the Council of Governors to get approvals, proceed. And then also market access and value chain improvements. This is where we are now working on, like how do we link our producers to the, let's say, the slaughterhouses. The studies were done, but we find that the slaughterhouses, even for the ones for export and even for local, they have the challenge of getting the continuous supply. Most of them are operating below the capacity. I think that is just a brief of the situation which we are in the livestock value chain contracting models.
Thank you, Rajab. Thank you so much. I think we have people who are interested here. We had a gentleman from Kilifi who was interested in the Galt Dairy. And I know you've indicated that we have at least going by the 2019 census, 35 million goats in the country. So how do we tap into that potential? I think this will be your gentleman, right? Make sure you grab a hold of him as well. We have poultry farmers who are here. You've not, even from your statistics, I didn't see any poultry. I know there are a lot of chickens around. We know that our number one as well is a huge chicken farmer. So we should also draw inspiration and from him as well. So we want to appreciate again Rajab Obama. Right? And just on the sideline, I was just wondering, Rajab Obama, Barack Rajab. There's a rhyming there. Is there any connection, any remote connection? Could be. You never know. Yeah. You might be getting to the root of power.
Yeah. Okay. What do you want me to say?
A round of applause for Rajab. Rajab, he doesn't want to consume. This is just a way of saying no. Let me not say. But I want to thank you so much for making time. Despite the fact that you had challenges yesterday, you couldn't make it as a department, but you've managed to sneak in and give us a rich stream of information, which we hugely appreciate. Very important also for this particular forum. Thank you so much, Rajab. As you have your seat now, we can, I know there could be questions, but if we start now, I know it will really eat away to your lunchtime, and you don't want also this to spill over to the next session. So we just made some special time for Rajab to just come and give us that information. But if you want to get answers from him as well, make sure you grab a hold of him, as he's also having his lunch just before we get into the next session as well. Thank you very much for being amazingly patient. We want to take a lunch break right now. And when we come back, of course, we continue a pace with so much that is packed for the afternoon session that my colleague Nemo will be able to take us through the afternoon moderation. So there we are sucking ourselves to access to finance for farmers and agribusiness, agricultural insurance, reducing risk for sustainable farming, exploring investment opportunities in agriculture. There's a lot that we need to see. So we can see how all this fits into the supply chain, right? From the farm to the fork. It's not for us to have that particular moment of the fork that is from the farm. We take a short break to lunch. Thank you very much.
Across Africa, agriculture is the predominant sector in the economies of most countries, accounting for between 30 to 40% of gross domestic product, and the sector is a leading source of jobs for over 2/3 of Africa's population. In Kenya, despite the fact that the agricultural sector contributes about 30% of the gross domestic product and accounts for 80% of national employment, mainly in the rural areas, farmers face crippling challenges in the agricultural value chain.
If we want to see this country grow, the cost of capital has to come down. Why is it in the West, right? Like in the UK, for example, lending to an SME interest rates are 2 to 5%. Germany, the same. US, the same. Why is the lending in African countries 15 to 25%? Doesn't make sense. Something systematically, the cost of capital is high, and I know everybody talks about risk, but we need to find a way, whether it's technology, whether it's talking to the financial sectors, whether it's, development institutions, something needs to be done. If the cost of credit is not lowered, the continent, the country, the sector cannot thrive.
Besides the financial burden, there is also the climate change crisis which has become a reality much faster than all scenarios predicted. And that's the situation at hand, begging the question, what next? For many years, farming has always been considered as a business of hope, and this is because of the uncertain market. Now, farmers are changing tacts and they are embracing contract farming. This farming model, which involves agricultural production being carried out on the basis of an agreement between the buyer and the farm producers, has enabled farmers not only access stable markets, but also embrace good agricultural practices.
It is a good idea. Most people would think this is something that doesn't work, but for us it has worked over the years. We began small with 5,000 birds in 2012, moved up, upgrading the business and doing bigger houses, and currently we are doing 20,000 birds in a span of 5 weeks. That is 35 days. Anyone out there that wishes to do contract farming, please be encouraged. It may not look like it fetches a lot, but it is an assurance that you can do it over and over. And I would wish that we give it a try. Contract farming is the perfect thing, especially on the marketing of the products.
Contract farming has many agro-based advantages and it's a fast-growing practice, but it has not lacked its fair share of challenges. One of the issues that has come up when interacting with farmers that are doing contract farming is the feeling that they are not involved in decision making. For instance, they don't have control of some of these prices that they get. How do we fix this?
The problem sometimes becomes, in terms of contract farming, and I keep going back to this, is lack of trust. Buyers feel that even though there's a contract, if a farmer gets paid 10 bob more, they'll go somewhere else. So they don't trust the farmers to a certain extent. Farmers feel that these buyers are not taking any of the risk, they're not doing anything, and they're not paying me enough. They're not paying me what I should get paid. So that lack of trust means that although in theory contract farming is great, it can have difficulties. So first of all, it's building the trust between the buyer and the farmer, and I think definitely co-creation, discussion points in terms of pricing, why the pricing is at a certain place. Now, think about it from a farmer's perspective. A farmer finds out that, you know, a buyer has bought this from me from 20 bob and then they're selling it at 200 bob. So they will think, I'm getting, you know, like this is just unfair. But if a buyer is able to explain, well, it's 200 bob because actually, you know, out of that 15 bob has gone for, you know, transport, for cess, for cold storage. So actually the profit margin that I'm making is this much because I'm taking on all of this. I think a farmer is more likely then to be able to understand that perspective. On the other side, the buyer also has to understand the farmer's position. The farmer is taking all the risk. They're growing, they're doing all of this. They also need to be given a good return, because if they're not given a good return, what is the point? And there are buyers out there who are actually willing to pay a fair price and an above market price, provided they can get good quality and consistency.
Well, it's a venture that will require all players on board for it to thrive. And that's why the International Conference on Contract Farming could not have come at a better time.
The main objective of this conference is to try and ensure that farmers' produce does not go to waste, that they are able to take it to the market, that they are able to get people, off-takers, who will take their produce. And the off-takers are assured of a sustainable, quality, and consistent supply of raw materials. Then we can only move forward. We will discuss many topics about contract farming. Number one, maybe being the off-take agreements, because that has been a challenge. When I've spoken to farmers who've done contract farming before, there's going to be models of contract farming and benefits. There is going to be policy to ensure that the policies guiding the contract farmings are good, and many other topics.
As key stakeholders converge for the inaugural International Conference on Contract Farming, the critical question is, how is contract farming going to revitalize the agricultural sector? The answers lie not just in the dialogues, but the actions that will be taken in the coming days.